STLHD Nation Podcast is back. That was very Hulk Hogan.
That was very excited.
Yeah.
You're excited to be back.
I haven't ran in a couple days, and I ran this morning, and I'm just like, feeling good. Got the endorphins popping. I can't exercise at night. I'll just be up till 3, 4 in the morning.
No, thank you.
I'm one of those got to do it in the morning or it's not going to get done, guys.
I'm one of those, I just don't like to do it.
I don't like to do it either. It sucks. I hate it.
But you can see that.
I have to do it, or I'll be angry all day. And the days I don't, I definitely know that I don't. And like the only days that it doesn't affect my actual mood are days I go fishing, because I'm obviously not going to get up at 3 in the morning and run before we go fishing.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess I could if I was a real badass, but I'm not.
If you were David Goggins style.
Yeah. Goggins.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Goggins. Mispronounced.
Stay hard.
Yeah.
You love that guy.
I love when he's like, it's like I saw a clip of him. And, and he basically, I'll paraphrase it, but he was like, you don't think there's mornings I could look at those shoes laying on my floor and think, I hate those shoes. And he's like, that's hilarious.
I like the ones where he's running and his wife is filming him and he's running and he's talking shit. And he's just like, don't be a bitch.
Yeah, she's probably driving next to him. So she doesn't have to run because he's probably on mile 29 or something.
Dude, that guy and Cam Haynes are like a different level of human being.
Those guys are machines, man.
And you can't compare yourself to them. Because they have a certain, they work their asses off to get where they are, but they also have a certain level of like, there's no, Cam's got to be what, in his 50s?
Oh, I would think so.
I think he's retired from his job now, like his actual day job, because he worked for the city or the county or whatever. Yeah. But like, I think you look at him and you're like, dude, there's like 20-year-old dudes that aren't as fit as you. You have like a set of genes. Not you, AJ.
No, I'm not. I'm the 20-year-old dude who's not in shape.
Well, I
thought you were like, have you seen me?
I think it's a mental thing, almost more than a physical thing too. Like, I think there must be a set of genes mentally that you have that just says, get up at 2 in the morning and run.
Well, there's that piece too. It's a combination, too, for sure.
Yeah,
and modern medicine.
Better living through chemistry.
Yeah.
But point is, I think there's something up there that just makes those guys like, a different breed.
Yeah. Well, I read Cam's book. And it was like pretty obvious at an early age that he was a different breed than the other dudes that he was hanging out with. David Goggins is a different scenario where he was like a total fat piece of shit. Like,
I've seen pictures.
Then he was like, now I'm going to go get
on the beach.
Yeah, lived like
a walrus.
Yeah, and the dude lived like the most terrible life ever.
Yeah.
And then went into the military and became a badass, and then got out of the military and got shitty again, and then went back. Like, he just kept going back and forth and back and forth. It's a really wild story. If you haven't read his book, Can't Hurt Me, I recommend it because it's absolutely fantastic book, especially the way that if you listen to the audiobook, the way that they do it, it's like a podcast with little interviews after each chapter with him and the guy reading it. It's really good. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. What I wanted to talk about was I went down to Gold Beach and I went fishing down there on the Rogue, and it was really fun. We didn't get any fish, but it was like hopped in my buddy's boat, and it was his kind of like day one of figuring out his program for down there, and he's a great fisherman, but I'm not going to say his name or anybody's name that I was down there because it's actually going on right now. But he was down there trying to figure it out. I was with him. There was multiple aspects of what we were doing that wasn't hitting. But it's a similar fishery, much smaller scale, but a similar kind of situation to what you'll see sometimes at Buoy 10. Where everybody's piled up and they're in one stretch of the river,
Yeah.
and they're doing the carousel, right?
Drano. Perfect example, man.
Yep.
Yep.
And they're doing the carousel, and they're trolling underneath, and they're just going to town, circle, circle, circle. One guy, somebody I respect, I told you this story already, but got into a fish. Everybody goes around him, meets back up, goes about their business. Some old man, not paying attention, this guy was older than dirt, pow! Runs into his boat, shatters the window.
Brand new boat, right?
Brand new boat.
Yeah.
Beautiful boat. Plows into him, smashes the windshield of his boat. He's lucky that's all that happened, right?
Yeah.
Because we've seen this.
Thankfully, he was trolling.
He was trolling. He was not full step or getting up either, which we've seen.
Yeah.
Right? But in those scenarios, much like driving, it's like, man, there's no like, and I'll probably ruffle a few feathers with this, but there's no, when you're out on the streets and you do something stupid, or you're clearly not able to operate a machine, people will call the cops. People will go, this guy's impaired, right? Whatever.
Yeah, you have to retake your license. Like,
yeah,
there's rules around it.
Dude, I remember one time I was driving to Lincoln City with my wife and kids, and there was somebody in front of us that was all over the road. I mean, almost got in two head-ons, and I'm not talking just kind of getting a little squirrely because they're looking for their CD case or something. Like, I mean, all over the place. I just dated myself. Nobody has CDs anymore. You know what I mean? Like, dropped a French fry, yeah. Right? You know? So, or getting busy. I've seen that too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That makes you a bad driver.
It does. How do you know?
Yeah. I've seen it.
I've seen it. So anyway, this person's all over the place, and it got to the point where it was like, this is scary. So we had to call the sheriff, and the sheriff actually pulled the person over, and I don't believe they were impaired by a substance. I think they were just not able to operate their machine because they were very, very, very elderly. They were all over the place, or didn't have glasses on or something. I don't know what the situation was, but it was dangerous. But there's nobody who does that on the river.
Yep.
I've never heard of it one time. And we're getting in, buoy tent's kicking off. Guys are already out there tearing it up. There's going to be a few people who are either brand new, have no business being out there, don't know what to do. They haven't gone with somebody multiple times and figured out how to run the program. Or there's people who are, because I think equally a really young novice who has no idea how to run a boat in that situation is equally as dangerous as somebody who's just impaired by, you know, whether they're drinking or high or old or tired or whatever, right?
Make it hard.
Like, you can, as we've seen, it can go south that fast.
Oh, yeah.
And
even if you know what you're doing.
Even if you know what you're doing. I mean, how many times is just, I mean, accidents happen.
Yeah.
But there's no situation where there's like, I mean, I've never seen anybody be like, that dude should not be running that boat right now.
Well, you see that a lot where everybody recognizes that dude shouldn't be running the boat, but there's nothing that gets done about it.
Yeah.
There's no governing person that comes in and says, hey, dude, you gotta.
Because I'm sure there's times where people are not impaired, but they're texting for a minute or something, which you shouldn't do anyway, but somebody calls and is like, you know, some Karen's like, this guy's drunk, you know, and then the guy gets pulled over and he's like, no, I'm fine, and whatever. I'm sure that happens. And you obviously don't want to be a tattletale or a pain in the ass. But I do think there are times, and if you know this person, you know the situation I'm talking about, and you hear this podcast, which you probably won't, but if you do, I'm not calling anybody out. But in that scenario, it was very clear that dude had no business running his boat in that situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because where I live, you know, in Newburgh, the Newburgh pool there, I very seldom launch a boat there that I don't see the state police boat out checking people.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of wakeboarders and some fishermen and
because it's basically like a lake.
Yeah, it's like a lake in there.
Yeah.
But I see them in there a lot. Like, very seldom do I fish that stretch without seeing that big Oregon State.
Yeah, we've gone a couple times, and every time I see that sheriff, too.
And they usually just wave when they go past. If you're fishing, they don't do much. But I see them checking people a lot. And it's always interesting to me because even at its most crowded, and that does get crowded in there, that is never half as crowded as Buoy 10 at its peak. It just not. And yet, or Drano Lake or Wind River, any number of the mouth of the chutes or whatever's at its peak when you have those big clusters of fishermen in one spot. I never see them out there really.
Never.
But I see them on those wakeboard boats and in those areas.
Listen, I'm not advocating because look, nobody wants to.
Oh, it's a hassle when they board your boat and you're going to pull all your stuff out.
Yeah.
I've had to do it.
I'm just saying, like, as a community, how do we say to certain people kindly? Because you also don't want to go out there for your first time and try to figure it out and have a bunch of seasoned, salty dudes be like, "Hey, get out of here!" You know what I mean? Yeah. You don't want that either.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and maybe...
Well, everybody's got to learn sometime, right?
Everybody does have to learn sometime, and mistakes will be made. But as somebody who was a guide for many years, I'm sure there's times where you've seen somebody in a drift boat or some go down a river, and you're like, dude, you have no business being stretch a river.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when I would run the Deschutes.
Yeah.
And going through Whitehorse Rapid is very specific way to go through that. And
I know seasoned dudes who have lost their whole boat.
Oh, yeah. I ran it once when the water had come up. We were on a multi-day trip, and the water got really crazy high in that trip. And when we got to the scouting point at the top, because at that point, I had been guiding at least a couple of years there.
I ran. You told us about this.
And there was 3 boats down there. Yeah. 3 boats, and one of them was a guide boat. The guy had been there for 20-something years. Mm-hmm. It just got big, man. It was giant in there. But I've stood at that scouting point. It's always good to hop out of the boat, even if you've done it a bunch. Hop out of the boat, run down there, make sure there's nothing in it.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. There's no boat jammed up right in the path or something weird. And I numerous times have stood there and watched people just willy-nilly, just wherever, going through and crashing into rocks and usually rafts. Because I think there it seems like a lot more people were just like, I rented a raft or I bought a raft. That was really common for a while there.
Yeah.
Got a raft and a big rod. I'm going to go out and fish and the chutes. Since I got a raft, I'm sure I'll be fine.
I think there's probably a false sense of security with rafts.
Yeah, because it is harder to screw up.
Yeah.
It's not that it's harder to screw up. It's more forgiving when you do screw up.
Sure.
They don't fill. If you got a self bailer, even if you take a bunch of water in, it just kind of lifts out of the water. All the water flows out, and they're super. A big raft is wide and hard to flip, and you still can mess them up. But they bounce off rocks easier than drift boats do. They don't pin up as hard. I think so. There's probably a false. There's probably a not false sense of security. I mean, people don't have to be as technically proficient in them.
Then you see some guy in a wood boat go through and just thread the needle.
Oh yeah, and you see guys like I did.
I watch those videos on YouTube. I'm like, how?
Dude, I did the lower stretch of the Rogue through, down through Hellgate Canyon and Blossom Bar and all that with Jeff Helfrich once and his guys, and I could row a boat, and I was just blown away how good those guys were.
Yeah,
I mean, those guys were so good, so good.
Something every day,
They were like river ninjas.
But that's awesome.
Yeah,
but cool. There are times like, how do you go? Because like nobody wants to hear that. No 75, 80-year-old dude that is not able to. And please don't jump on me for throwing out
being
things.
Ageist.
Yeah, I'm just saying, running a boat and driving a car, two very different things. There's so much going on, especially in those situations like where we were at on the Rogue. Dude, there was boats. I could reach out and high five the boats next to me.
They're tight.
They're right up on each other. And the guy that was running the boat I was on, he's done it a million times. He's done that fishery a bunch, other similar fisheries, and gets it, understands how to do it. But even then, there were times where he was like, I'm sorry, excuse me. Yeah. He'd tell us all, pull your shit up, I got too close or whatever.
Another
it happens all the time.
Yeah, another part of that. I fished with my kid this weekend on the Willamette, and we were running up closer to Salem bass fishing.
Yeah,
and it was packed with kayakers, stand-up paddle boarders, inner tubers, people swimming in the river. It was packed.
Yeah,
and the amount of I think, and there was probably a dozen boats we saw running in there, although most of them weren't running very far from the launches because it's skinny. And I mean, there's spots in there right now that can be more than 8 inches deep at the deepest point, with the whole river's, 250 feet wide or 300 feet wide and, just a couple inches and you kind of find it. But the amount of potential for catastrophic problems of running over somebody who, you're trying to run through a shallow spot in the jet and somebody at the bottom in a deep spot is swimming and only their head's poking out of the water. I mean,
it's kind of wild.
It's kind of wild, man.
How Wild West the water is. Like the little lake that we go hang out at. There's no signs, there's no nothing. It's just an unwritten rule that there's a path that you take if you're skiing or wakeboarding or wake surfing, whatever it is, running a tube. There's a path on the outer rim of the lake where everybody goes in this direction. You never go the other direction. You always go this way, and everybody knows it. It just kind of happens. It's like herd mentality. And then the guys that are trolling will hang out in the middle of the lake. And every once in a while, they get a little close, and then the guys in the boats will be like, hi, and then they move out and all that stuff. But it's pretty much just an unwritten rule. There's no... And you'll see 12-year-old kids get on a jet ski or a Sea-Doo and just take off, jumping stuff. They have.
Yeah. That's amazing. More bad things don't happen.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating for anything. The only question that I have, and I would post this to anybody who wants to leave a comment on YouTube or send us a message or whatever, is what is the tactful way that you can, and kind way that you can approach something like that, where like somebody should have said to this fellow last weekend, somebody should have been like, hey man, you need to not be here. This is not for you. You know what I mean? Because even the guys that were on his boat didn't go, hey, dude, you need to, because it wasn't just a simple mistake. I watched it happen. It took in slow motion. It took like a minute and a half to happen. People were screaming, waving hands, everything. This dude wasn't looking down. He wasn't looking all around. He was looking straight ahead. He just didn't pay any attention to what was happening.
Yeah.
He was probably watching his fish finder or something and watching his rods, BSing with his buddy. He wasn't drunk. It was early in the morning. He was just...
Or if he was drunk.
If he was drunk early in the morning, there's a whole other host of problems we need to have a conversation about. But I think it was just one of those situations where somebody should have been like, hey, man, you might want to stay over here. Because there was people who you could tell were not comfortable being in that situation. They were trolling on the outskirts.
Yeah.
And they would run up and down, a little closer to the bridge, farther away from all the main gig. And they were figuring it out. They didn't want to get in the mix of where everybody was at. And you know what? Great.
I think a lot of fishing, what you're talking about, or a lot of boating in general, is sort of knowing your limits.
Yeah.
And that's part of it too. Like rowing, you see that a lot,
Oh, I know my limits. I'm not proficient at all.
But I'm just saying, a lot of guys don't know their limits.
Yeah.
They run in a big motorboat, don't know their limits. It looks like it's pretty easy. You get in it, you turn it on, you drive it like your car, and it's not like your car, man.
These guys go out on the ocean, grab all their buddies, and get a big boat and go out on the ocean and have no idea how to run out there. And
dude, I heard about my neighbor. I love my neighbor. He's a cool ass old man.
That big giant boat.
He bought that giant boat, $150,000 ocean boat, and he's got his radar and his all his stuff on it, and he just hops in and goes in the ocean. I'm like, man, I didn't even think you had a boat before.
Yeah.
And like, and you're going out over, Garibaldi Bar or heading up to Buoy 10 and crossing over the bar up there. And I'm like, that's a big jump from no boat to head out and catch a tuna. I'm just saying, like, that's a serious,
I know, yeah.
That's a serious jump. Like,
no, you're absolutely
like
right.
maybe a pedunker first, maybe learn how to steer, I guess. I don't know.
Because like you had to go to Coast Guard school, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I had to get my Coast Guard license. I had a near coastal license, so I could actually guide in the ocean.
Yeah.
And in freshwater. I had a 25-ton near coastal, and
I
had to go to school, and I had to have all my sea service time. Yeah. Be in the boat enough time before I qualified for it and all that stuff, which is great. It's awesome. Yeah. I mean, if you're, and I've let it lapse, I'd have to do it again now, but if you're just a recreational angler, you take the online class. It takes about, an hour and a half?
Load
up
all your buddies in a cooler full of beer, and you hit those waves, boy.
Yeah. I can tell you this. I mean, I guided in Cook Inlet in Alaska. That was the only saltwater guiding I really did. Down here, I would take when I had my big boat, I'd go outside the Jaws occasionally just to fish for fun. Yeah. But I did guide in Cook Inlet in Alaska, and the ocean still scares the crap out of me.
Oh,
man.
Dude.
Like, it's very difficult to really be knowledgeable. We go out with Pro occasionally into the ocean. I've taken my kid out. You and I have gone and fished with him, and I'm always like, man, good for, like, he spent his time.
I've never felt more safe.
His knowledge.
Yeah.
But when I went out with him, I took my youngest Liam, and we went out of Buoy 10, or out of Borington, and out and around past the South Jetty, went out and fished, and I was like, I know enough to know I don't want to drive out here right now. Screw this, man. Yeah. And we were fine, and I totally was not like, we're not safe. But I was like, I hate this thing, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I
wasn't having the right equipment, too. I mean, that boat's a hot knife through butter. But, like, I don't know. I'm not advocating for more regulation. Lord knows I'm so sick of all of that stuff personally. What I'm talking about is the communal, like, as a community, how do you go to somebody like this old fella and say, I think it's time to maybe troll for kokanee on the lake. You know what I mean?
I think what you're talking about is somewhat self-regulation. Yeah. So, and
that's a good point.
People need to have a better understanding of what their limitations really are. Yeah. But also, I do think, we've seen this with some of the online hate directed at people that do something wrong, or I think that there's a way to come to somebody and be like, hey man, I'm glad you want to be part of this community. Yep. But here's a safe way to do it.
Dude, that's a really good
point. Or here, you shouldn't be going, hey, pack your shit and go home, dude. We don't want you here. Instead, it needs to be a little more of like, hey man, cool that you're here. Here's some things that'll keep you from dying.
But that's what I'm talking about, is we so often, especially now, regardless of what it is, whether you're just not fishing properly, or you don't have a good understanding of the regulations or zones or whatever it is, or hunting, I mean, you name it, there's a kind of default position where a lot of people go, moron, dumbass, and it's like, wait a minute. You weren't always an expert either. And maybe the better thing to do, and if you just, the old golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated, right? So why wouldn't you send a direct message and say, hey, I just want to, not publicly shame you, but I think that maybe you want to take that picture down because of these X, Y, and Z, or maybe it's time to seek other arrangements for fishing because this isn't exactly something that you can handle anymore, or whatever it is. Do it in a empathetic way, right? Yeah. But everybody's just so quick to be like, public shame people, and because it gives them that little hint, and they would never do it in person, right? I'm sure that there's a Facebook group or two that has people talking about the incident that happened last weekend that I witnessed, where they're just publicly trashing this fella, right? And even the guy who got hit, I talked to him afterwards. Yeah, bad day across the board. But even the guy who got hit, when I was talking to him, he was like, these things happen, man. Yeah. He's like, I'm out here. We're bumper boats out there. It's going to happen. The old guy wasn't paying attention. We worked it out. Insurance is going to cover it, you know? And he wasn't like, screw that guy, take his boat away from him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think there's, as a community, we should think about, because like, it is empathetic to go to somebody who doesn't know where they're at in their journey and say to them, hey, just as a friend, as a friendly gesture here, maybe you should do something different, or you need more time, or whatever it is. I would want that.
Yeah, make some changes that'll help you be successful.
How many times have you been on the river and you're fishing and you're clearly doing something wrong, and some seasoned person has come up to you and said, or maybe you've been that person and said, hey, looks like you're having a good time. Maybe you should try this. You didn't tell them, hey, loser, you're doing it wrong.
Dude, I'll share with you a story from when I was a guide and I was fishing. Well, we'll leave this intentionally very vague.
Yes.
Fishing the same section of river for the same fish day after day.
Yeah.
Many, many days in a row. Was there on like a Friday. Went home, came back, started fishing on Saturday. Fine. Go to where we were fishing, using the style of fishing we were fishing. Again, I'm going to keep this intentionally vague. Start catching fish. Dude pulls up to me, another guide I knew, was like, hey, last night, like 10 o'clock at night, emergency closure. They closed down to this point, like 40 yards more downstream.
No, really? You had no idea?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
It was an emergency closure that they had popped up. I hadn't gotten the notification. This was many years ago.
Many years ago, yeah.
I hadn't gotten the notification on my phone or in my email. Hadn't seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Was not a salmon fishery. So there's that. But point is, like, had that guy been an asshole? And I probably looked like a real asshole at that point.
Sure.
Because I was a guide.
Yeah.
I literally had clients in my boat.
Yeah.
Late night, like emergency, like move the deadline.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Shit happens, man.
But like, the way that you were approached with that.
Yeah, it was somebody I knew.
Professional.
And you pulled up and was like, hey, dude, last night and to be fair, 100%, we moved down and fished, caught fish. I watched probably 35 other boats pull in to the upper part of that stretch above the new deadline because it was terribly rolled out as well.
Sure.
You sometimes, again, talking about regulations, sometimes you're kind of set up for failure there.
Yeah.
Late night change, not everybody gets notified, but now it's the law.
Oh, dude, I've seen it so many times on Facebook where, like, the day after an emergency closure of some kind, or even just a closure, normal closure, somebody posts a picture online and says, yesterday I caught this fish, and everybody just piles on them. Hey, moron, it's closed. Do your homework. But in a sense, yeah, you're right. Do your homework. You can't, if you're going to go out and fish and do all this stuff, you need to hunt, whatever it is. You need to be aware of the regulations and know them. Yeah. And if you don't know, don't go. And but sometimes, as you've experienced, mistakes happen, or you don't realize, again, deadlines are a big one. Like, if you don't see that fence post looks just like this fence post and you're 10 feet above it, right? I've seen multiple videos of that where guys get just hammered because they mistaken the deadline, right?
Well, in this instance, we're talking 15 or 20 years ago now, because it's been a long time since I was a guide.
Yeah.
In this instance, you weren't getting instant notification on your phone. You weren't getting, like, I would have had to log into my computer, look at my emails. And to be honest, I was getting up at 2 a.m. and I was getting home at 8 o'clock at night and then sleeping so I could get up at 2 the next morning to go the next day. And that emergency rule change or whatever was just...
I'm just saying that you would never say this stuff to somebody's face. Never. And if you say that you will, you're a liar. Because
or
you
you're
wouldn't.
a real asshole.
I've never met anybody who would say the shit that I've met real assholes who say dumb shit to people all the time. But some of the stuff that I've seen, nobody's got the balls to say this stuff to anybody's face. Nobody does. Unless they're hammered drunk.
Yeah.
But seriously, I mean, the stuff that they're saying, I mean, look, we all know giant asshole people. We've been around long enough. And they say some dumb stuff.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff that you read, you would never say that to somebody's face. Ever. Why wouldn't you stop, take the time, send an email to somebody or a direct message or whatever, pull somebody aside kindly and say, that's what needs to happen. That's what needed to happen to this fella. For sure.
Well, and it could be he was, having an off day. It could be too old to see his boat. It could be all sorts of things. I think the other thing is you got to assume positive intent.
100%.
Yeah. You got until
he was not trying to hit this guy's boat.
Yeah, he's not trying to run somebody over.
No. No.
And I think that's the other part of it is people automatically assume negative intent. They assume that if you or somebody, not you necessarily, has done something wrong, well, you must have done it to spite them.
Dude,
to,
how many times have we made that? We've made mistakes over the years.
Oh, yeah. Posting
a photo, whatever it is. And people immediately assume negative intent, and you're just like, look, it was a mistake. We move fast. We do a lot of things really quickly. We're a small group. Sometimes mistakes happen. And so often it's just a pile.
Oh, man.
And you're just like, that could have been handled so differently. And everyone would be happy.
Yeah.
Right? But they want so badly to tear other people down rather than sometimes difficult conversations need to have.
Or it's like when you're a kid. Or it's like when you're a kid, and you see kids, they maybe not you or me, but you see plenty where kids want to be part of the in crowd. And so when one kid starts picking on another kid, pretty soon 20 kids are picking on that same kid. I think that happens too. It's that sort of gang mentality of.
Also, people think they're hilarious.
Yes.
Lots of people who are not hilarious think they're hilarious. Oh, burn! Got him.
Yes. That is true.
An hour later, they get even more angry because nobody put a laughy face next to their comment.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm funny.
Oh, yeah.
Mom says I'm funny.
Oh,
I'm going to the basement. Seriously.
Oh, yeah.
They think they're hilarious. I mean, I think I'm hilarious.
Looks only counsel. Yeah, it is funny, man. Like, there is some of that.
Again, I'm not advocating for more. The great thing about this podcast is we can talk about whatever we want. And sometimes we talk about things that may be a little bit controversial, right? Like the shirt you're wearing.
Like the shirt I'm wearing, which Facebook will not let you see.
No. Yeah. Or the knife. But, these conversations need to happen because if you're listening to this, a time it will arise where you're going to be somewhere and you're going to see somebody doing something that they shouldn't be doing, whatever it is. I think that's the better statement is not particular, like somebody shouldn't be running a boat or somebody shouldn't be fishing or whatever it is. More so the conversation, the point I'm trying to make is the thing I want you as a listener or viewer to kind of think about after you watch this or listen to it is at some point you're going to come across somebody who's doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And if you assume positive intent, then you're going to more often than not find out that they had no idea what they were doing, they shouldn't be doing. People make mistakes. People are human. If you approach that with a little touch of empathy, everybody's going to have a good outcome. But if you go into it, hey, moron, nobody wins, right?
Nope.
Yeah,
100%.
And it's hard. You get cut off in traffic. I'm definitely the first person to be like, you moron. idiot, what are you thinking? Sometimes it's pretty obvious. They just don't care about you, and they're being jerks. More often than not, I find, after my initial anger, that I scream to myself inside my truck, not out the window, you find that somebody who just didn't see you or whatever it was, right? Sun was in their eyes, whatever, right? So that's my Mr. Rogers moment. Go into it with a little bit more empathy, and you might find that you and the person you're dealing with has a better time of it than if you went into it with anger. Right?
Fair enough.
And if you get out and you're fishing at buoy 10 and you smash into somebody,
you should probably apologize.
So just be careful out there and read your regulations and don't be a dick.
Sounds fair to me.
All right. Wrap it up.